I welcome in. You made it. You made it a whole week, and now we're back. I know Thursday is a little appetizer, but it's barely that, right? It's warm bread at a hungry table that gets mashed and destroyed before you even get your appetizer. So now we're back, week 2, and appreciate you rolling with us. This is our weekly Sunday parlay. So we're going to look at everything across the board here, the entire slate, put together a 3-leg parlay. And before we get out of here, instead of supersizing it like we normally do on all the other parlay videos, on this particular video, if you're new, and if not, then you'll already know, we're going to hit you with a 3-leg 6-point teaser because I think there's a lot of value in moving spreads, especially through some key numbers. So what I need from you, the key thing that I need from you right now is simple, right? I need you to hit the thumbs up button. I need you to subscribe and the notification bell so you're not missing anything across the board. We have tons of content here. The premium insider access is also live, up and running. Everybody's on heaters right now, so you want to take advantage of just the access and the insight as well as the picks. And BetMGM, $10, going to turn you into $200 free. That's what we call building a bankroll right away. So where we begin is at BetMGM. And the first play to add to the ticket here is going to be under 40.5 in San Francisco. Now, this is dropped. This was 43.5 right at the start, I think, of either week 2 or just before week 1 began on Sunday a week ago. So this is dipped 3 points. I still like going under 40.5 in this game. I don't think either team is really prime to score some points, and it's just been the theme here. Whatever you want to attribute it to, if it's just the overall heat, the change in weather, the unexpected heat. I know Lofty's already checking the temperature out there in San Francisco for Sunday, but since 2014, in the 9 home games that we've seen since Levi's Stadium opened, maybe it's something on the ground, right? Maybe it's not just the weather up top. Maybe it's something below. In those 9 home games played in the first 4 weeks of the season, the under is 8-1. Oh, by the way, what are we talking about? Seattle and Geno Smith coming to town? It's not like they're going to light the scoreboard up and throw the ball deep down the field every single time to DK Metcalf. They're going to need to control the football to keep it away from the Niners offense. Speaking of which, don't expect much from this Niners offense either. And this, I think, also feeds into a lower scoring game. If you think Trey Lance is just going to step back and arm his cannon and throw everywhere, don't expect it by any means, especially with the banged up offensive line that San Fran's dealing with. The Niners, 9-1 ATS last 10 as home favorites. 1-10 ATS last 11 as 7+ point favorites. The majority, if not all, right, coming as what? With Jimmy Garoppolo at quarterback. So what have you seen specifically with Trey Lance that this kid all of a sudden is going to come out and change?
Balance it out.
People don't know. Find my own article.
Yeah, I do that sometimes. I also have the scenario sometimes where I look something up, and then I'm reading the analysis, and I'm like, oh, I really agree with this. And then I look and I wrote it. It's like, well, that's not it. Like, I do that more often than you would think. I'm like, yeah, this guy, we're in lockstep. It's just my article.
That's
so bad. All right, here we go. Saturday, 11 a.m. Eastern. That means it's college football live before lock time here at Stokastic. 13 games, plenty of questions, plenty to break down on this fantastic Saturday. I'm Ben Rasa. I'm joined, as I always am, by Matt Gajewski. Sir, week 3 is already here. The season is moving. We're getting into some big-time games, though. How are you feeling?
I'm great, man. I'm really excited for the rivalry games we have today. Some of the conference matchups, like LSU, Mississippi State's on FanDuel, not DraftKings, but that's a game I'm really excited for. Can't wait for the return of Purdue versus Auburn. That was an awesome game we saw last year. It's a really good slate across the board.
It is. It's got a little bit of everything, a lot less monster spreads. Last week when we were talking about games, every game felt like it was 2, 3, 4 touchdowns. FCS schools were creeping into the player pool, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, but we don't have one single FCS school on the DraftKings slate, do we?
Not the main slate, but we certainly do on the night slate.
Well, you win some, you lose some, but you know what? We're going to focus 13 games. Chat, I already see you guys rocking and rolling. Boomer Sooner, they've got a big-time game against the Scott Frostless Nebraska Cornhuskers. That will be there soon enough, but if you are ready, you want to dive into it.
I'm ready, my man. I'm ready. We have a lot to get into.
Yeah, we absolutely do, and we're going to start with some of the conference. There are conference games creeping in, and this one is just that: South Carolina and Georgia. Georgia's a 25-point favorite, 55-point total. It's hard to really argue with anything on that. We already saw Georgia dismantle an Oregon team. Then they played the sneaky Samford, 33-0. They took mercy on them. The defense looks to have no issues once again. Stetson Bennett is just rolling. He's 7,300. Does he get enough? Does he do enough to warrant consideration here?
Georgia, this offseason, Kirby Smart in particular, and Todd Monken, their OC, my guy Todd Monken, they talked a lot about changing their offense a little bit, modernizing it, because they've had some struggles recruiting some like elite end receivers, the UC Alabama with Jamison Williams, John Mechie. And if your defense isn't completely comprised of first-round NFL talent, it's going to be hard to keep up with those guys. And they partially did so because they got hurt in the playoffs. So they kind of changed their offense a little bit. In 2 games, they've been attacking downfield. Their pass rate is above 50%, and they've just been killing teams. So that's something that stood out to me. And they do have weapons, and they have unique weapons. You have a bunch of tight ends in Darnell Washington. He's 6'7", 270. He's actually really athletic for that size. Brock Bowers, of course. And to me, Stetson Bennett's been a main beneficiary of this. He's been over 300 yards twice already this year. That's not something he's really shown much in his career, not by any fault of his own, but the Georgia offense would kind of take their foot off the gas in previous years. Now it appears, at least through a 2-game sample, they're not willing to do that, and they're trying to modernize. So Stetson at his price, I honestly think if Georgia continues this offensive style, this is the cheapest we're ever going to see him all year. He has negative rushing yards in the year so far. Don't worry about that. This is a guy that finished with over 200 rushing yards last year. When he's in the negative rushing yardage per game, it's going to be a rare occurrence. He's going to generally finish positive. So right now, 7,300, I think he's one of the best quarterback plays on the board. The real question is just who do you stack him with, because Georgia will still rotate their pass catchers.
That's the tricky part. You mentioned Bowers, but he's significantly more expensive than the other freak tight end. They got so much athleticism there. Then you've got guys on the outside. Like, is it McConkey maybe? Like, what do you think? Is that where you'd go?
I think you can play a contrarian Bowers, and I think you can play a contrarian McConkey. They're expensive. When this team does play competitive games, today projects to be more competitive than anything they've done so far. They will see larger route shares, more targets. So you just have to predict those spots when they will be close. Then you'll see full Brock Bowers. Then you'll see full McConkey. We just haven't seen it to this point. And I'm not sure South Carolina can keep it close. But if we do, those guys are excellent GPP plays. We don't have a Donai Mitchell today, which kind of condenses the receiver rotation a little bit. I think you could maybe play some really cheap guys like Marcus Rosny-Jackson, Dominic Blaylock, or Kieris Jackson. All those guys are 4.2K or below. Just as contrarian GPP stacking pieces with Stetson. They're not going to project as well as some of the other min-price guys we have, but they are access points to this elite Georgia offense. And I actually don't hate Darnell Washington. I think he's more of like a showdown play, but he plays a ton. This team is in 12 personnel a lot, and Darnell Washington, his route rate is at 59%. That's higher than really any point we've ever seen in his career, but he's a former 5-star tight end. We know he's athletic and he's massive. There's just not the athletes on the other side to cover him. So those are contrarian pieces, but I think more so for showdown than main slate. And as usual, the backfield picked up right where it left off. Last year, they had 2 really high draft picks in Zamir White, James Cook, splitting work sometimes with 4 backs. It's the same thing this year. These guys are just showdown plays.
On the other side, certainly South Carolina is going to have their hands full. Rattler's going to have his hands full, 5,200. I mean, I assume that you're not going to want to target him against Georgia's defense, or do you say, considering they're going to be losing, that maybe volume can get him there?
I think the volume is more so going to benefit his pass catchers rather than Rattler putting up a GPP winning score. This offensive line is horrible. They're allowing 4 sacks per game. That's crept into Rattler's negative rushing yardage. He was never really a negative rusher at Oklahoma, but he has been consistently in the negatives this year. He does have the volume, but again, this is his toughest opponent. It's far tougher than, like Georgia State. So I don't even know if he can backdoor his way to 300 yards, which he needs to pay out this price tag on a main slate. So I'm out on him. They rotate 4 running backs. They're getting back Christian Beal-Smith today, allegedly. Jaheim Bell, they're using like as Deebo Samuel, which, it really hurts him. I thought he would continue to see targets, but last week he only saw one target. They're using him like a running back, like a big H-back. That's not really useful. The only player I have any sort of interest in is Antwain Wells. The guy's averaging 9 targets per game, but my question is, how efficient are they? And could you maybe find somebody with better efficiency at a cheaper price? And I personally think you can.
Yeah, if you want to attack Rattler, Slim pointed out over 199.5 passing yards prop is available over on Prize Picks. I don't mind that just because he might throw the ball, 40 times in this game, but it's hard to really look to anything else. Is there anything really on South Carolina in the backfield? I know you mentioned Beal-Smith. It seems like it's a team that we could probably cross off.
That's my sentiment. I think it's basically just a contrarian Antwain Wells, maybe a Stogner, but probably not even him.
Next game is very intriguing. Oklahoma and Nebraska, 65.5 point total. Sooners are 11-point road favorites. I've said this before. I don't know why I'm bringing it up to the masses. I said some real bad things about this game in the preseason, saying that Nebraska would be primed to win this game. I still think they actually are alive to win the game, but it's just been a disaster. Let's start with Oklahoma. Dylan Gabriel, he's $9,500, but you couldn't ask for much of a better spot.
Yeah, the only issue with him is you have cheaper and better cost-adjusted plays on the slate, but when you're talking strictly upside, so for those of you playing tournaments, Gabriel has it. And he kind of occupies that like Caleb Williams realm, where when this offense is truly unleashed in competitive games, he has some of the highest upside in the country. We're talking about a Jeff Levy offense, which runs at the speed of light when they're in competitive games. And it's going to be balanced. It's not going to be as run heavy as that Ole Miss offense we saw Levy running last year. Gabriel's more of your traditional pocket passer, whereas Corral was a dual threat. So there are a lot of access points to a ceiling for Gabriel, and he's very stackable. Unlike last year, you have seen a condensed route share between 4 guys, really. It's essentially 3 receivers, 1 tight end. We know exactly who they are. Marvin Mims, he is the most expensive receiver on the slate. In my opinion, I think there's one better receiver up here in this expensive range, but you can't deny the upside with Mims. I'm going to be playing a little him. Theo Weiss is in a price point where I'm not too interested at 7,700. He has single-digit targets on the year right now. I would rather just play Mims. Jaleel Farouk also has single-digit targets, but he has an 80% route rate. The one positive we can say is competitive games are going to coax more routes, more targets out of these guys. And last, tight end Braden Willis has an 81% route rate. He's not going to be as involved as these receivers, but if you just want a cheap access point to Oklahoma, he's 3,700. I like all these guys. The players I'll be playing the most of are Mims, and I actually have a decent amount of Willis, not a ton, but just as a pivot off some of the really cheap guys in games where I'm stacking Oklahoma.
Where does Eric Gray fit in there? Do you use him possibly in like super odd Gabriel stacks, saying I just want to capture all the production? Do you use him alone? How does the running back situation factor in?
I would probably use him as a one-off or in lineups where I'm not playing the other skill position guys. He's not the clear back. They do rotate in Major and Javonte Barnes a little bit. I guess we could call him like the 1A, and then Major and Barnes are change of pace backs. Gray does handle most of the pass game work, to your point on maybe using him with Gabriel. He's just not dynamic in that realm. And he's not really dynamic as a rusher either. He's kind of been an underachiever here in his career. So what it comes down to is you have a guy in a slight timeshare, and you just have pure bell cows price below him. So I think he's a contrarian option, but I'm not going to be playing a ton of him.
Chad likes the points. A lot of Nebraska talk. I'm not opposed to that. I didn't bet this game, but I don't hate it. And they do have a pretty healthy team total, still north of 4 touchdowns. What remains? I know there's a lot that we need to probably infer, and we just don't know in terms of the coaching change. But what we do know, Casey Thompson and co, is they're going to need to put up some points. Can they do that? And then how do you attack them on the DFS side?
I think they can. Their team total is really high. It's almost 30 points. So you can definitely play Thompson as a contrarian piece at quarterback. He's going to be largely unowned today because of where his price point is, but he's somewhat mobile. He's a guy that's not like Lamar Jackson, but he rarely finishes with negative yards. I think this team's pass rate increases and their pace increases. We know Whipple came over, but he's kind of hinted that Scott Frost was holding this offense back a little bit, not letting Whipple fully unleash the offense we saw at Pitt last year. He's gone. So I think there's a better chance now that Nebraska actually runs the true Mark Whipple offense, which is extremely pass heavy, extremely up tempo. And we know Oklahoma is going to do the same thing on the other side. Money's come in on the under. I think that's mainly because we don't know how efficient they're going to be, but I think these two teams are going to play fast. So I like that for Thompson. I like that for his pass catchers. His pass catchers are really cheap. I think this game is going to go under-owned altogether when you look at some of the other value pieces we have. But Trey Palmer, their wide receiver one, 4,200. He's a 20% target share. I mean, 8.3 targets per game. No, they haven't been the most efficient, but if you want to pivot down here, he's it. Marcus Washington, he's averaging 78% of the routes, 5 targets per game. He's a good pivot too. I'm going to be playing a decent amount of these 2 Nebraska pass catchers. And I think you can do so with decent confidence because of the high pass rate, the team total, and they're just largely going unowned.
It definitely has some appeal. And again, I know it feels like it's dumpster fire. It's an 11-point spread. Like, this is far within the range of a potential competitive game. I'm interested to see here, and I get it. Last question I'd like to ask you, do you anticipate having any lineups, or would you recommend possibly in tournaments having Gabriel and Thompson together?
I think you can do that. Absolutely. I'm only running 25 lineups today. We didn't talk about this at the beginning of the show, but I'm heading to a wedding. So just to protect myself from any unseen news where I have to change like 150 lineups on the fly, we'll be keeping the lineups limited today, so I don't just get absolutely destroyed by late news.
I respect that. And I respect everybody's hopping in now. We had some people hop in late. I see all the regulars. And if you want to support us, hit that like button. It really does help the show. I know you guys, and just in a little bit, I'm going to tell you what we got going on at BetMGM, but I want to talk about one more game before I do that. Purdue and Syracuse. This is on my betting card. So was the over 59.5. Syracuse is a 1.5 point favorite. We saw Purdue open their season in a very back and forth game. They were at home against Penn State. We know a lot of what they want to do. They have some injuries on the offensive side. So I want to start there. What's going on with Purdue, and how do you think they attack Syracuse today?
I think they try to use their pass-heavy up-tempo scheme as they generally do. Their only real injury, actually they have 2. King Doru's out for the running back room. They don't use their running back a ton anyway, but I think it's now just a pure timeshare. Downing probably getting the lead, but they have a couple of their backs that should be involved. Otherwise, it's still going to be their up-tempo game. And Brock Thompson's injury, he's unlikely to play, we'll see. But that should condense snaps for some of these contrarian guys down below. Ultimately, O'Connell, with the pass volume, he's a pretty good bet to hit the 300-yard bonus. It's just he offers no mobility, -17 cumulative rushing yards this year. That's a staple of his game. He needs the bonus to kind of make up for that negative rushing upside, I guess he has. But overall, I think you can still look to the receivers. We've seen Charlie Jones, just an absolute monster this year. The Iowa transfer, props to Kirk Ferentz, letting more talent out of his program. It's not like he could use that this year. Charlie Jones has an unbelievable target share this year, double-digit targets in both games. I think he's very clearly the number 1 receiver on this slate. And because of the King Doru injury, Brahm has been talking about using him in the backfield, not like Deebo Samuel, but a carry here and there. The floor is just really high for Jones. But that gives us an interesting pivot situation where we can gain leverage with TJ Sheffield and Mershawn Rice, both very cheap guys, both decent pivots off some of the other cheaper receivers people are going to be playing a ton, and you're getting direct leverage off Jones. So I think Thompson, who's projected to be out, vacating 60% of the routes, a lot of those should go to Sheffield, who was already at 68%, and Rice, who was at 42%. I think these are pretty good, cheap GPP plays. And then Payne Durham, their tight end at 4K, I think he's live too.
With King Doru out, does that seed or consolidate work in the backfield? Or do you think it's just more rotations and it's still irrelevant?
I think it's still a rotation. Their coach hinted at like taking the hot hand approach. They have some talented guys back there, but it's just hard to predict right now.
On the other side, speaking of hard to predict, I really don't know what's going on with Syracuse. And I don't mean that in a bad way. They just came out, they blew the doors off Louisville. We've seen Louisville play like 9 games already. That's also a story for another time. Louisville plays every couple of days, but Syracuse has looked pretty good at times. Your boy Garrett Schrader has really, obviously he's always had ability on the ground, throwing the ball well, efficiently. He's racking up yards. So at 6,400 against a Purdue defense that I think can certainly be exposed, and he's at home, is he in play today?
Yeah, I think so. Honestly, I don't want to just call him the best play on the slate, but I kind of think he is at this point. He's extremely mobile, like one of the better dual threats in the country. And his passing has taken a huge step forward. I think a lot of that is credited to their new OC, Robert Ane, who came over from Virginia, and we know what he did with Brennan Armstrong last year. This offense is going to be just a lot faster in general this year, probably geared more towards the run because of Schrader's skill set. But I mean, he's completing nearly 80% of his passes for 11 yards per attempt. Now, they've not necessarily played the best teams in the country. I think this is their toughest match to date, but even with a little negative regression at his price, he's just a monster play today.
Is he possibly even cash viable?
Yeah, for sure.
So if you go to him again, you mentioned, he can get it done on the ground. What does that do for Sean Tucker? Because Syracuse has got a top end back. He's almost 9,000 though. He still handles a ton of work. He's live, I think, for 30 touches in a competitive game like this. Can you pay for him?
You absolutely can. He's touched the ball 27 and 33 times. Those weren't even the most competitive games. They've only had 2 running backs touch the ball this year. LaQuinta Allen, just a pure change of pace. And I think you can also play him with Garrett Schrader. He's their leading receiver right now, not only just in yards, but in targets. They throw the ball to the running back a ton. Tucker's a main beneficiary of that. They're both awesome plays here.
Anything else from this game?
At the receiver position, this has been a tough evaluation. It's been a bit of a rotation, but I think Oronde Gadsden is the number one. It's just at 6,300. He leaves a lot to be desired with a route rate just north of 50%. Same with Damian Alford at 5K. If you want to take a shot here, I don't hate Devon Cooper. He has 9 targets on the team that ranks second. And he also has 94 receiving yards. So that's been pretty efficient, but you're still taking a pretty decent swing here with Cooper. Route rate's 51%. We can do a lot better, but if you want to just try to stack Schrader, not a lot of people are going to do it. I think that's one way you can.
I will say I like Syracuse in this game. I think they're going to win the game, and they're just 1.5 point favorites. So if you're looking to do a little of that, it's the perfect time to talk about what we've got going on. And you see it on the screen. BetMGM has brought back their big time offer of bet 10, win 200. So what does that mean? Well, first off, if you're a new user, you want to go sign up there, use the link in the description of this video. You'll find it down there. Go there and deposit. You can deposit just $10. You got to bet a college football money line. So any team to win, you could use Syracuse if you want. And in that game, if either team scores a touchdown, which we know is going to happen, $200 credited to the account. I know a lot of you watching are saying, I already did this. Well, that's awesome. We got some new people checking out the stream. If you want to take advantage of that, it is right there. Man behind the glass dropped it right in chat. Look at that. Limited offer, bet 10 on any college football money line, win 200 if any team scores a touchdown on Saturday. A great opportunity, and we're going through the games. I like Syracuse today. The next game, I've seen some people talk about this a little bit, that possibly Western Kentucky could be a live dog here. I don't think they're going to have a good year, but I'm not sure how good Indiana is either. This game seems to have sneaky shootout potential, a 61-point total. Indiana's a 6.5-point home favorite. Let's start with the Hilltoppers, though. What do you expect from this team? They've beat up on bad competition. How good are they?
I have a lot of questions about this team. To your point on the bad competition, they've played down to some of it too. They haven't been quite as pass heavy as they were last year with Kitley, who's now at Texas Tech, and they have a D2 transfer quarterback. I think we're still waiting to see what he truly is, but early returns have been decent. Now he gets a step up in competition. Reed's at a price where I'm not too inclined to play him here. They're still running a lot of 4 wide though, not quite as much as last year, but their 4 wide rate is pretty solid. What confused me was the pricing on this passing attack. So I would rather just play a one-off in the pass game than play a stack with Reed. I think you can. This is just my personal preference. Dawood Davis is their wide receiver 1 right now. He's the only one above 100 yards, and he is 202, incredibly efficient, 17 targets, easily leads the team. He's less expensive than Malachi Corley and Jalen Hall, which makes no sense to me. And then Michael Matheson is that last receiver. He just has a 57% route rate. So you can see when they use tight ends and stuff, he's the guy that comes off the field. It's just Dawood Davis for me. Just play the wide receiver 1 who's priced as the wide receiver 3 here. It's pretty easy with Western Kentucky. Their backfield's a disaster. Probably avoid that.
Yeah, certainly they still have that type of tempo. We're going to find out a lot about them because, I mean, they play just absolutely no one so far. I haven't been impressed against Austin P, and then they played Hawaii, who honestly might be worse. That team is an absolute disaster. Let's go to the other side because a team that I have not seen play at all is Indiana. They've got a healthy team total. The Missouri transfer is still leading the charge. under center, 6,200 for Bazelak. Do we start with the passing attack or do we look to the backfield?
Let's start with Bazelak. I think he's going to go under-owned, and I'm kind of debating with myself. They have a really high pass rate, 54.3%. Is that because they've been in competitive games, or is that just naturally what Indiana wants to do? We're getting a pretty good sample now of Indiana passing the ball a ton. So Bazelak could be a contrarian guy that like backdoors his way to 300 yards. He's going to need it because he's not mobile whatsoever, but nobody's going to play him. I'm somewhat interested. But I think rather than play Bazelak, I think you can also look to one-offs in this game at wide receiver. Cam Camper is one of the best plays on the slate overall, just looking at a price-adjusted perspective. He's the wide receiver one on a really pass-heavy offense at 4,800. He has 28 targets this year. Absolutely incredible for a team that's played 2 games. He's averaging 14 targets per game. He has a 36% target share, and he's averaging 99.5 yards per game. He's basically been a walking 100-yard bonus, plus all of that PPR volume he has. He's priced below DJ Matthews, who's coming off an ACL. Matthews might be the wide receiver one when he's fully healthy, but he's been on a snap count to start the year, and I don't see that changing 1 week later in the year. And then they rotate wide receiver 2 and 3 behind them, Kobe and Emery Simmons. They're rotating. Camper has a locked-in target share here, and I don't think it changes. But if you don't want to play anyone in the pass game, they've also condensed their opportunity in the backfield. Sean Shevers, the Auburn transfer, has touch counts of 18 and 21 in 2 straight games. He's pretty active through the air. He's their pass catching back when they do use one. It's not the most active receiving role for the running backs here. But all I'm trying to say is 7-point favorites, high total, condensed backfield. 6,100 for Shevers is a good price. I think he's cash viable too.
Yeah, I think that checks out. I like him quite a bit as well. I kind of just want to ask you, and I know the answer is probably somewhat in a gray area, but you've got a guy like Bazelak at 6,200. Clearly, logically, finding $200 to Garrett Schrader is the move. But do you think that there'll be an opportunity in tournaments to maybe pivot to an Indiana stack if Syracuse is a more popular player? Do you think the prudent move is more likely to just get the $200 and go to Schrader?
I think going to Schrader is the better move.
Anything else in this game? We're going to find out. I know this is not relevant to the DFS side. I really don't think Western Kentucky is any good. I just don't know if Indiana is any good either.
That's my sentiments as well. I seriously considered betting Indiana at 6.5. Ultimately, I couldn't get myself to pull the trigger, and now I would rather pass on it at -7.
That's kind of where I'm at as well. You can go to oddshopper.com and check those lines, see if anything is still at 6.5, but I just don't think I'm going to do it. I've also seen some people say that, and I think you actually might be one of them. I did betting you with you, which is available over on the Odd Shopper Network, but I forgot if you bet this game. Cincinnati's north of a 3-touchdown favorite against Miami of Ohio, 23-point favorite to be exact, 51.5-point total. Cincinnati's playing pretty good football. Arkansas is a good team. I don't think there's any shame losing down in Fayetteville. Then they beat Kennesaw State by 50 points for Owls. But what is left for us to break down here against the Miami of Ohio team that has serious issues?
I did bet this game, but I took it at -20. So they got a decent number there. It's a really tough game to target for DFS. It's a great game, I think, just for a betting perspective. But Cincinnati uses essentially a pocket passer in Ben Bryant. I think you're running the risk of them taking the air out of the football, something they did routinely with Ritter, who's a better quarterback last year. He also doesn't run, so you don't even have that built-in floor. I'm out on Ben Bryant. Their backfield's going to be a 3-way committee this week, and they've shown no preference towards any of the runners. So I'm out on that. And then they also rotate receivers. Tyler Scott is the leading receiver. His route rate's 78%. Nobody behind that is really pushing even 60% here. You have a couple 51, 53% guys. They rotate tight ends as well. Cincinnati, for as good as they were last year, I was generally avoiding them outside of like Jerome Ford. And I think with the timeshare they now have running back, I think they're a team to avoid here.
Yeah, I mean, it's a situation. You mentioned that they could take the air out of the ball and do some things that aren't great for DFS. And then talking about Miami of Ohio, I mean, did they get the Bowling Green Award of a team that's just irrelevant or what?
For the most part, they made a quarterback change. So I'm not even confident we're going to see volume to like a Mac Hippenhammer today, who would really be the only guy I'm interested in. Maybe Jalen Walker, he's their wide receiver too. But again, changing quarterbacks. Brett Gabbert got hurt in their week 1 game. They used 5 running backs. Just avoid Miami, Ohio.
Is there in the largest of tournaments. I mean, I know you can almost do anything if a guy's playing, but do you think there's any scenario where Avion Smith by himself is just a guy that we see, maybe he runs for 100 yards?
Maybe in better matchups.
Because it looks like he can move. I mean, I don't know anything about him. I'm just looking at the game log. The one thing you could say is it looks like he has some mobility.
I think he does. I just am curious if he can access that in this game.
Yeah, that's a fair point. He could take some sacks, and since he could just really lay it down where Miami of Ohio's team total is hovering around only 14, that's a tough ask on a 13-game slate. So I get it. 6.5 still out there for Indiana on FanDuel. That's good to know. Just don't know if I can do it.
Wisconsin, I can't take it.
Yeah, tough scene for you.
Sure is.
South Alabama. And we're going to talk about Zach Charbonnet right now. South Alabama, 15.5-point dogs. UCLA, 59.5-point total. The Jaguars, I think this is the first time they've been on the slate. So talk to me about another possibly Sun Belt giant killer. What do we have to break down here?
Man, I hope so. I like South Alabama in this game. I actually consider betting them if they get a couple more points there. I was hoping to get around 17, but it seems to have stalled. They actually have a decent implied team total. So more or less, I think they move the ball a little bit here, and that could be enough to just maybe target a South Alabama guy as a run back to a UCLA player. They changed quarterbacks. They went to Carter Bradley, the Toledo transfer. I'm not really interested in him. He's had a middling career and couldn't win the job in Toledo. So that's a problem for me. The backfield, LaDamian Webb has been a pretty good bell cow back. He has touchdowns of 21 and 22, but now they're 2 touchdown underdogs. That game script is pretty gnarly for him. And then in the receiving game, they do use 3 guys pretty consistently. Jalen Wayne, Colin Lacey, and Devin Voisin. These guys all have route rates north of 75%. Wayne is clearly their wide receiver 1, and I think you could look to Lacey as their wide receiver 2. They're pretty cheap. These guys are going to be almost entirely unowned, but they could be pivots off your really cheap guys like your campers and whoever else you decide to play in this cheap area. So I don't hate a one-off South Alabama receiver, but that's probably all I'm going to use.
Nothing in the backfield.
LaDamian Webb is interesting, but there's just better plays than him. He could be a contrarian piece to target, but I don't have a lot of interest.
On the other side, UCLA, they have a really healthy team total, sizable favorite. DTR is kind of in a weird situation. You know, he's not all the way to Dylan Gabriel, you know, punching close to 10,000, and he's not in like Schrader 6,500 range. He comes in the mid 8s next to Clayton Tune. Is that warranted? Do you target him, or is it just someone that we might have to live without today?
He projects pretty well. We know how mobile he is, and he plays in a Chip Kelly offense, which is extremely fast. They've actually been pretty pass heavy to start the year too, and they haven't played anyone good. Beat up on Bowling Green. So 52% pass rate is kind of shocking to see, but DTR definitely benefits from the offense. He's mobile. I think he's fine to play. Like you said, I would rather play Gabriel, or I would rather play Schrader, some of the other cheaper guys, Stetson Bennett, but he's probably on the list of top 3 guys I'm considering in tournaments for his upside. And the receivers are hard to evaluate if you're stacking him because Cam Brown hasn't played this year. I think he's a starting receiver when he's healthy, but who does he take off the field? I'm not sure. If I were to guess, I think their 3 receiver configuration is Jake Bobo, the Duke transfer, Casimir Allen, and then Cam Brown. None of them are really priced at a point where I want to stack DTR. I think I'm just going to run him by himself when I do.
Last guy, and certainly an important one. When you look at this team, they should be winning. Zach Charbonnet, he was a little banged up. What do you think his role will be today? He's 6,300. I got a couple 1v1s I want to ask you as well with him. How do you project him in this game?
Yeah, he's awesome. Missed their last game. Apparently just banged up. He's been practicing. I'm not real concerned about this. The one thing I'll say is Chip Kelly has a history of warming guys up in full pads and sitting them. Did that a lot with Josh Kelly. So I'm not saying it's going to happen today, but if you're the type that gets really mad when your player sits after warming up, maybe avoid Charbonnet, but I'm not going to be doing that. I'm going to be playing him in cash. He's arguably the best price adjusted running back on the slate at full strength, which I do believe he is here. Awesome pass catching role, had 5 targets in week 1, 36 yards there, 21 rush attempts. He's as much of a bell cow as you could possibly be when fully healthy. So love Charbonnet, incredibly efficient as well. Awesome matchup, high team total. He checks every single box.
So you would have him wait a couple 1v1, Charbonnet or Grant from Nebraska
Charbonnet.
over Zach Evans as well. I know he's we haven't got to Georgia Tech, Ole Miss.
Yes. Close,
Okay.
but yes.
Okay. I like it. Anything else here? I haven't bet this game. Spread feels about right. UCLA's a solid team and they'll be tested. They just won't be tested here.
I haven't bet it either. It would be South Alabama if I did.
Keeping it moving. Oh, yeah, here we go. This is the game I wanted to talk about. Your boys, Cal and Notre Dame. I asked you before the show what the hell was going on. 12-point favorites for Notre Dame, looking for their first win. I'm going to relish this as a guy that doesn't root for Notre Dame. Low total in this spot. We'll start with Cal. We'll get them out of the way. I don't think they're particularly good. Certainly their biggest test to date. What do we do here with them, if anything?
I think we ignore them. I literally don't think there's anyone you should even consider. They're not using their best player. It's their freshman running back, Jaden Ott. He's just running laps around everybody. But he's in a timeshare until that change, a three-way timeshare as well. Until that changes, I think it's a situation to avoid. They do use three receivers every single play almost with Jeremiah Hunter, Jay Michael Sturdivant, and Marvin Anderson, but none of them have really shown any upside. So it's a pass. I'm not interested in Plummer even at the price point.
Yeah, low team total. I don't think this is, I don't have much to say on them either. So for Notre Dame, it's been bad. They better win today, but they got news that their starting quarterback is out for the season, I believe. And I asked you before the show, who does that leave us? And the answer apparently is Drew Pine at 5,300. Does that make him relevant? And what is the situation for the Golden Domers?
Drew Pine's a pocket passer. He has not shown a lot of upside in his career, but you would think that this means more pass attempts because Buckner was scrambling and running around like crazy. But I think you could look to Mayer. He's going to be their target leader throughout the year. They're really only consistent option at receiver. You can call him that, I think. Plays a lot in the slot, but also in line. And then from there, it's basically just Lorenzo Styles. He's been really efficient, but he's not getting enough work. He has 11 targets on the year. He should be seeing way more than that. Braden Lenzy and Jaden Thomas have been woefully inefficient. Jaden Thomas is just straight up doing cardio out there. He's not getting any targets whatsoever. He's the Stone Min, and I don't even think you'd know he was a starter if you were watching the games, but he has a 78% route share. He has 4 targets on the year, which is egregious. Just play Mayer, Styles, or what I'm doing, just X out Notre Dame.
Is there any way that this backfield starts to consolidate with Tyree maybe becoming the lead guy, or is that not something you see in the cards?
He hasn't been more efficient than the other guys. They're all terrible. I don't even think one of them has 100 yards yet.
Yeah.
This was supposed to be a good O-line, and it's not been great to start the year.
Cal's level of competition has been bad, and I don't have it in front of me, but I looked at this morning. Their yards per carry allowed hasn't been bad, though. Like, so far, they've been decent against other teams' offensive fronts. I think Notre Dame's a step up, but I don't think they just run through Cal either.
Yeah, they played our good friends at UNLV and almost lost.
UNLV, put it in, -2.5, North Texas. I know you're there. All right, anything else, or can we move to a real game here?
We can move to a real game.
Penn State -2.5 at Auburn, 47.5. This is going to be a great game. I cannot wait to see it. Very, very excited. Penn State, we've talked about them a little bit this season. Clifford, Singleton is a monster and he's only getting better. Parker Washington, the Western Kentucky transfer. They've got weapons, but in a 13-game slate, do we really need to focus on them, or should we be focusing on them?
They're an evolving team, so they're interesting to talk about. There are reports coming out of Penn State that Drew Allar is going to get some series in this game, so I think you just X out Clifford at this point. He is also not running at all anymore. Tough to play Clifford right now. And then in the backfield, Katron Allen hasn't been practicing this week. He allegedly is going to try to play, but I think we see a two-way timeshare. And honestly, with how good Nick Singleton was, there's a chance that he continues to see more work, kind of like a Trevion Henderson did last year for Ohio State. He's that caliber talent. He's the number 1 running back in the country in this class. So Singleton at 5,300, no, he's not going to project real well because he's in a timeshare, but he might have the most fragile projection of any running back on the slate. He could see something like 20, 25 touches, or he could remain around 10 in the timeshare he's been in throughout the year. So he's somebody you should treat carefully. I don't hate throwing him into tournaments because he does have that upside. It's a stiff test against Auburn's defense, which I think is the strength of their team, but Singleton has the talent. throw him in GPPs if you're so inclined.
On the outside, do you find yourself looking at even in one-offs as like a guy like Tinsley or Washington, who was a little quiet to start the season? Or do you say, again, Auburn's going to do enough to keep this respectable?
I think Tinsley's their wide receiver 1, and he's priced between Keandre Lambert-Smith and Parker Washington. I think he's without a doubt the best price adjusted play. I don't hate him as a one-off either, because Penn State does have a really high pass rate.
On the other side of this game, if Auburn wins the game, and I don't think they're going to, they're going to have to run the ball because their passing attack is atrocious. TJ Finley, it's not working right now. He did not look good against Mercer. Okay. And then San Jose State, who looked bad against Portland State, he looked even worse. What does that do here for the DFS side of it? I mean, is there anything in the passing attack that we should even be considering?
Probably not.
Can't be Finley, right?
He's turned the ball over 3 times. He has 1 touchdown. He's been rotating with Robbie Ashford. I think he probably stays in a rotation, not to mention the strength of Penn State's defense is that secondary. He's going to be throwing against the toughest secondary he's faced all year. I'll pass on Finley. I'll also pass on their receivers. There's no clarity who the wide receivers are in what order. Malcolm Johnson was injured. He's coming back. That just muddies the situation further. They're going to rotate 4 receivers, and then they have a tight end who's pretty involved in John Samuel Schenker. I think the only player you're looking at here is a contrarian Tank Bigsby. He's been in a 1-2 punch with Jarquez Hunter, but at times when they've really needed to lean on someone in a close game, they've used Bigsby in an elevated role. He's the only guy I want to look at.
Yeah, they're going to have to do here. I mean, it's a close, tough game. They're at home. They've got some things going, but it does feel like Bigsby could push, certainly for 20 plus touches today.
Yeah, I think so too.
Okay. We did have a super chat. Steve McGee, you see that? Look at that badge. Member for 18 months. Favorite flex play on DraftKings below 7,000. Would it be Charbonnet? Would it be another guy? When you look at that range, there's a lot of names in that 6 to 7K range. Anyone that stands out?
Charbonnet for me. You're
okay.
on it.
I would agree. All right, well, let's keep it moving. We're doing fine for time here. This is another interesting game. We've got Ole Miss. We've got Georgia Tech. We've got some potential plays for sure here. So let's start with Ole Miss. We know Lane Kiffin and this offense can be very, very innovative. Huge team total. So that means, a lot to like here. Talk to me about how you want to construct your lineups with Ole Miss.
I think they're going to continue being a run-heavy team with the quarterback issues they have. I'm not sure if they're issues. They're just rotating guys. We're not really sure what we have with the quarterback situation there yet, but we know we have 2 awesome running backs, and one is Zach Evans. I don't think we've seen the full Zach Evans yet because of their opponents so far. And, you could make that argument with Georgia Tech too, but I think Georgia Tech is the best team they faced this year. It's a guy that's averaged 7 yards per carry in his career. He's an awesome pass catcher when he's involved in that area of the field. This is an explosive rushing attack. He's at a great price here. No, he's not going to be the full lead back. So that's why he's just slightly behind like a Charbonnet, and like slightly. These guys have a razor thin difference in projection, but that's enough for me to favor Charbonnet. But overall, I'm going to be playing a lot of both Charbonnet and Evans today. And then I thought it was going to be Ulysses Bentley, the SMU transfer. But Judkins, their freshman, this guy has been awesome in a small sample. So awesome, they haven't been able to take him off the field. Now, in more competitive games, this is a 17-point spread, so I'm not sure it's that. But say the game plays to 7 points or something like that. It's closer than we think. How much work does Judkins get? I have a question about that, and it'll be answered at some point this year. At his price, though, I'm still willing to take shots. He's going to flip the build for you. A lot of people are going to be playing 3 expensive backs, whether it's Tucker, Charbonnet, Evans, Shevers, whoever it may be. Judkins gives you an access point to maybe a Marvin Mims or a Charlie Jones, something like that. And he's been in a 60-40 split really with Evans this year. And that's something we've seen Ole Miss do. They did it last year with Snoop Connor and Henry Parrish and all the backs they had. So they just run so many plays. Like some of these teams that are running 80 plays a game, like Zach Evans is not going to get 45 carries. It's not Minnesota. They're going to rotate backs in an intelligent way. So there is also just some value there. Like we see North Carolina do this in the past when they had Michael Carter and Javonte Williams. I think this is something you could potentially play in tournaments specifically just at the price point.
So the interesting thing about that, and it kind of leads me into what I want to talk about there with tournaments, you would think, well, this team's got a massive team total. Obviously, their quarterback he's got to be, towards the top. But that's not, or maybe it is, but do they really have a quarterback at this time? Jackson Dart is $9,000. Is he going to see every snap in this game, or are we still kind of sorting through him and Altmaier?
Altmaier got hurt in their last game. So I think, and just they gave these guys the Michigan treatment. One started 1 week, one started the other quietly. That's, they talk about it at Michigan, but not at Ole Miss, and maybe not up here, at least. I'm in Wisconsin. Maybe it's a conversation in the South that's had, but we've seen Dart just be better. His efficiency stats are better. Maybe that's the injury to Altmaier, but I think even without the injury, we're going to get Dart here for the first somewhat competitive game, rivalry game almost, that these teams are going to play. You can play Dart as a contrarian option, but he's a little too expensive for me. He's significantly more expensive than like a Schrader, and he has we'll call it a lesser leash for sure than like a Schrader.
On the outside, Mingo and co, like, do you just, if you have these guys and you land at their price points, are they good? Is there priority list? Let's just round out Ole Miss and the pass catchers.
I think Mingo's number one. Again, this team hasn't been in any competitive spot, so routes are depressed. Like Mingo, 63% route share. I would expect this north of 75% in competitive games. The one player who's actually been on the field a lot is tight end Michael Trigg, the USC transfer. He's a guy I do like as a pivot at 3,400, just as an attachment to the highest implied team total on the slate. All of these Ole Miss guys, I think, are going to come in slightly under-owned, and Trigg is an excellent price point. Outside of Trigg and Mingo, Malik Heath is just too expensive. He's not the wide receiver one right now. He's 7,300. That's more expensive than Mingo. I'll pass. Then you have Jalen Robinson, 4,900. I think he's fine. Just a 52% route share. Again, I would expect that to be a little higher in competitive games. The wide receiver three has been a complete split between JJ Henry and Jordan Watkins. I'm just going to focus on Mingo and Trigg for the most part.
On the other side, we saw Georgia Tech take on Clemson, and I actually thought they battled. Jeff Sims battles. But on a 13-game slate, how much do we really need to consider this team? Or do we say Ole Miss's, tempo and environment actually raises Georgia Tech to playable?
Sims is erratic. He is mobile, which you mentioned. I think that's the best thing we can say about him, but I'm not sure the upside's there. What does he give you as a passer? I don't think it's enough here, even though they have a 24 total. And there's a lot of issues with this team from a DFS perspective. Sims at quarterback, he's not a great passer. He needs to do it on the ground. They're going to use 3 running backs. Before, we could at least play like a one-off Jahmyr Gibbs before he transferred, but now Dante Smith, Dylan McDuffie, and Hassan Hall are all active. They also use a rotation at receiver. I think Nate McCullum's the best option here, but at 3,900, there's just cheaper plays I'd rather get to. I'd rather play Trigg on the other side.
Not much else here.
No.
Okay. Yeah,
Not
Georgia,
not much.
I think Georgia Tech has looked okay. This is just not the best spot in the world. Spread feels about right. 4 games left here. Let's keep it moving. Vanderbilt. I need Vanderbilt today, not because I bet them, but they'll cash their team total and wins if they can beat Northern Illinois. 59.5-point total. Competitive game. We've talked about Mike Wright a little bit so far this season. Once again, he's been that kind of maybe contrarian pay down option at quarterback. 5,700 mobility. Is it worth a shot potentially going to Mike Wright?
I don't think so. He got benched in their last game. I will say that was a more competitive spot. They need to win this game for their win total. So I'm hopeful they win. I'm thinking about betting them against the spread for you, Ben.
Please.
We know his upside. It's just purely as a glorified running back. He's not a good passer. And I'm concerned because AJ Swan, their backup, showed a little bit of competence as a passer. What is his leash like here? Northern Illinois basically doesn't play defense, so I'm not too concerned about that, but it's enough where I would rather just pivot to other plays.
On the outside, it's interesting. So sadly, I've really seen this team play a lot so far. I even watched them against Elon because I got problems. Will Shepard has been good. Yeah, I know. Will Shepard, 5,500. Jaden McGowan is a couple $1,000s more expensive. To me, it seems like Shepard's getting, as much work. When you look at them, do you see the priority list being McGowan over Shepard, or are there other guys we want to think about in the passing game? How do you break down what Vanderbilt might do through the air?
No, I do agree with you with that sentiment, but to me, it comes down to if Mike Wright's under center, that's going to be tough to target any of these guys. So I think for me, it's just move on from the pass game and maybe play a contrarian running back here in Ray Davis, who's quietly been a pseudo bell cow for this team. He's one of the guys I think we can use for leverage. I know we're jumping ahead here a little bit, so sorry about that. But since Rocco Griffin went down, there's no Patrick Smith for this team right now. Rocco Griffin is questionable. Again, he's banged up, so I'm not sure it matters a lot. he's seen a really good workload and he's been catching the ball as well. I think you could look to Davis as a GPP play in a price point that kind of is right in line with like Shevers and Evans and some other guys.
On the other side, Northern Illinois, certainly Vanderbilt has shown they can give up points in bunches. How do you think they attack? They've got around a 30-point team total.
I think they just run the ball. That's what they've tried to do. Rocky Lombardi has some alarming splits. Last year, he had a couple really good games, but he averages in the mid-20s in pass attempts per game. That's horrific. He needs to be coaxed into these shootout environments. He was over 300 yards twice last year, but then he was below 200 8 times. He rushed for 90 yards twice last year, but he was below 30 9 times. He's just too volatile for me at this price. There's better plays straight up. I'm not too interested in Cole Tucker at this price. I'd rather just play Charlie Jones. Shamar Thornton, not active enough for a wide receiver 2 in this team. And they're rotating backs. They're rotating 3 guys, Ontario Brown, Harrison Whaley, and Mason Blakemore. Blakemore's handling the pass game work. There's just better plays than these guys.
Let's just, everyone watching, let's all put our energy into Vanderbilt just winning this game. That's what we need to do. Let's just get it done, Commodores. I agree. Obviously, Northern Illinois is going to keep it on the ground. If Vanderbilt can slow that, I think they win the game. I'm just not sure this has the great stackability because of the limitations at quarterback, as you kind of alluded to.
100% agree.
BYU and Oregon, 58-point total. I like the over in this game. I think there's going to be points. BYU, Elon Musk. BYU, they've been operating without their 2 big-time weapons. And I want to know if you have heard, what is the status of Gunnar Romney and Puka Nacua? Because Jaron Hall has been holding his own without them. If he gets them back, it'd be a big boost today.
Romney's out, and Nacua's a game-time decision. He's dealing with an ankle sprain, which is problematic for efficiency either way. And you have Chase Roberts at 3,200, who's now at the very least going to be the wide receiver 2 for this team. Caught 8 balls, double-digit targets, 122 yards. And at best, he's going to be the wide receiver 1 in a voluminous role against an Oregon secondary, which has yet to generate a pass defense this year. Yes, they played Georgia in week 1. That's defensible, but they played Eastern Washington in week 2, and they still have yet to force a pass defense. It's not an incompletion. That's when you actually force an incomplete pass. Oregon secondary hasn't done it. I think you can still play Chase Roberts.
Yeah, I mean, they lost a lot in that secondary. I love Oregon's front with Sewell and co. I just don't know how they're going to hold up here. I think they're in Eugene, and I do kind of lean Oregon. I've been leaning more and more towards them. But anything else in the backfield for BYU? We've talked about Hall and you talked about Roberts. What about Brooks and Katoa?
They're running a straight timeshare, and the strength of Oregon's defense, I think, is up front. The offensive line's been great pass blocking, but they've struggled run blocking. I think you can just find better price-adjusted plays.
On the other side, so we've got Oregon. They are a favorite. Bo Nix, $5,500. He's got a bunch of different guys on the outside. They lost a lot of wide receivers, so they're trying to fill in. And it's really hard to judge Oregon because we've seen them against Georgia put up 3 points. They drove the ball all over the place, and then they couldn't score. Then they hung 70 on Eastern Washington. How do you think they attack today? And, I mean, is Bo Nix in play as possibly a tournament pay down option?
I never thought I'd say this, but I kind of think pick 6 Nix is in play.
Wow.
He's mobile. He's cheap. Like you said, their offense did run the ball all the way down the field against Georgia twice. They were in the red zone 2 times. Bo Nix threw interceptions twice. They turned the ball over on downs in the red zone. I believe they missed a field goal in the red zone. Like, this team actually moved the ball against Georgia. BYU's defense is good. They're not Georgia good. So I'm optimistic they can move the ball, and bookmakers agree. Their team total is 31 points. It's really good. So who do you stack him with? That's the question. I think their wide receiver 1 and 2 are going to be Troy Franklin and Chase Cota. Cota's $3K flat. Now, he's not, I personally don't think he's the most talented receiver, but he is the stone min. I would rather play Chase Roberts on the other side if you can find $200. But if you absolutely, no matter what, love your lineup, can't get the 200, Cota, I think, is fine.
What happened to Chris Hudson, who, of all the production they did return, he looked like he would be the guy, but is that not the case?
Yeah, they use him in a strict 3-way rotation with Deontay Thornton and Sevin McGee in their first game. And then they had a throwaway last week, which I think the sample is kind of just clouded.
Backfield looks too crowded, correct?
Yeah, 5 guys. It's a rough scene, maybe even 6.
This is one, again, I'm definitely more and more I look. If I can find 3, I'm going to really bet Oregon more. I'm going to look at that money line as well. Maybe just forego it. I think they get it done at home. Tough game, but I like the over. All right. Couple games left. This one, here we go. Another one of your favorite teams, Colorado, 27.5-point underdogs at Minnesota. You had mentioned to me that they should play JT Strout more. I'm not sure that's working either for them. This team cannot score no matter who is under center. I mean, is there anything to say? Their team total today is a whopping 9 points.
Those words did come out of my mouth, and I'm embarrassed.
And now Air Force looks even worse. So it's even worse.
Don't play either signal caller here, no matter what. Their running backs are a timeshare. Their receivers are a timeshare too. So not only is the offense horrifically inefficient, but we can't even get these receivers on the field for a majority of the snaps. Like, nobody on the team has a route rate north of 70%. X out Colorado.
The only good thing I've said, and I think Colorado is live to win no games this year because their non-con did them no favors, and they're not going to win today, even though Minnesota lost as like a 50-point favorite last year to Bowling Green. Don't see that happening. Tanner Morgan and co, are they relevant, or is it just such a bad game environment we don't want to reach for Minnesota players?
I legit like Minnesota skill position players. They have awesome returns, and they seem to be humming a little bit more with their old OC coming back, Shiraka, but they just are still so run heavy that it's really hard to target any of their pass catchers. Like PFF, 2 of their top 3 tight ends in the country are on Minnesota. They have a great receiving attack. Just for whatever reason, they decide to run up Mohamed Ibrahim into the back of their offensive line 700 times a game. They have 4 new offensive line starters, but they're going to do that again. The matchup's not concerning. The price is concerning, though. There's just bell cows cheaper than him that give you more competitive lineups than Ibrahim. But for the sake of being contrarian, he's got to be in play. He has as much upside as anybody.
No doubt about it. His volume is there. It's a great game script. Even in a low total, he can get there. All right. The final game here. I do want to say one more time, though, if you are looking to bet football, take advantage of that offer. It's in the description. Limited time. BetMGM. New users. Bet $10 on any college football money line after you deposit. Win $200 if any team scores a TD. That is a great deal. You're going to get $200 to the bankroll. Something to consider if you're looking to add a new book. The Kansas Jayhawks. How about this? They're scoring like banshees. They're much better, much improved. They take on Houston today. There are dogs, as they should be, but only 8.5 points, 58-point total. Is Kansas for real? Is this someone that we have to start considering as not a basement of the Big 12?
Number 1 scoring offense in the country. Yeah. Jalen Daniels, he has only one of his rush attempts is a scramble or a sack. 15 of his 16 rush attempts are designed. It is a part of this offense. For that reason, I think you can play him. He's a decent passer, but this team is going to be really run heavy. And what it comes down to for me is the involvement on the ground. He is involved in it. He's cheaper than a lot of signal callers on this slate. I think he's in play. If you're stacking him, just use Luke Grimm. He's in this mid price point between Lawrence Arnold and Skinner, but he's their wide receiver 1. I think he's without a doubt their best receiver. Running back is a nasty rotation that I want to avoid.
On the other side, Clayton Tune, 8,200. He's in that DTR range. Tournament viable, I would say. I'm still kind of confused at why Houston's playing only overtime games. I think they're a pretty good team. I think they'll look good here. Is this maybe I don't want to say a buy low spot on him and Dell because they're not cheap, but like, how do you look at this passing attack for Houston?
Yeah, I like them both in tournaments. Tune is mobile. That's something that's solid for him. Passing should get better. He's below his career averages right now, which he has a long career, so I'm not too worried about it yet. And then Dell, I think he's underpriced too. He finally jumped back 11 targets last week, 27% target share. He's going to have awesome games. Behind him, Matthew Golden's the 2 and Manjak's the 3 for those of you getting contrarian, but I think you can just play Dell. Golden would be 2 for me. I also really like Brandon Campbell. Taysom Henry has 2 sprained ankles, not 1. He sprained both his ankles, and he fumbled in their last game. I don't know how he's playing. He's also like 170 pounds, so we can't handle a full workload anyway. Brandon Campbell has a lot of upside on this slate, and I think he's also going to be contrarian. So for those of you making last-second pivots, I'm interested in Campbell as well.
Is Snead in play there? He would be the 3rd man up in that backfield.
I don't think so. They haven't really shown a willingness to use him much.
All right. We got a couple minutes left. And I just want to ask you real quick, if you can. There is one game, there's a couple games, but on FanDuel, SMU and Maryland is tonight. The total is north of 70. It's pretty clear that this is a game you're going to want to target. Are you just saying stack, stack, stack? Do you have any real quick thoughts on SMU and the passing attacks and all of that for FanDuel?
Both of the QBs are in play. The Maryland receivers are so cheap. Demas, and Jarrett. These guys are awesome plays over there. I also think Rashee Rice is a solid play if you're looking for a contrarian option. Watch the status of Jake Bailey. He's questionable, but they're an awesome stacking. I'm going to be trying to get a lot of them on that format.
Couple questions, then we'll bounce on out of here. Is it okay to fade Charlie Jones and GPP? I think that's fine. You can always fade.
Yep.
Rakeem Jarrett or Cam Camper on FanDuel?
Give me Jarrett.
Yeah, Jarrett. I'm so high. I know in week it was either 0 or 1. Maryland played. I think it was Buffalo, and they just for some reason couldn't score through the air. Like, it's such a good passing attack. I still really like them to do a lot of damage. Anything else? How do I make lineups? You guys finish the last second. 13 games, my man. We do the best we can around here. That's how we roll. Plus all the FanDuel games. Any other thoughts as you duck out of here? More importantly, are your lineups, how do they look? It looks like you're under the gun here.
I think they're good. I'm searching around for overlay.
Hunt.
There seems to be some decent overlay.
Well, I say that here. Last thing, 2 things, very important. 1, we still got plenty of people in here. If you want to just hit those likes button, we're about to cross 100 likes. That's always the goal for this show. I know we can do it. A couple people just press that like button. And if you're looking for more access to us, Matt_Gajewski, follow him on Twitter at DFS. You can follow me, and you can get inside our premium Discord. Another way to get access to some of the betting things that we do. You get there early. A lot of opportunities to do that. Akron plus 48. I don't want to do that. I might do that, but I don't really see it. Max Johnson, yes, he is getting the start. That is going to be interesting as well. I think we're in pretty good shape here. What do you say, fella?
Yeah, I think we're good.
Friends, we did it again. Week 3 up and down. Stay tuned for all that news. And of course, there are plenty of shows here on the Stokastic Network, whether it's MLB, NFL tomorrow, a lot of big things, but we're going to bounce on out of here. He's got to go to a wedding. I need to go to the couch to sweat out all the bets that we have made here for me, for Matt, for Mike behind the glass. Good luck, friends. Let's cash some tickets. And when you do, tweet us. We love to see those success stories. We'll be back next week. Same time, same place.